So today we have Lata ji with me, a very profound educationist of our country. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're most welcome, Naziya. I'm happy to be with you today.
Thank you. So my first question to you would be, when in 2020 the National Education Policy was introduced, it really took our attention for a while. And so you being in this field and in this with this experience in education and all the structure of it, what do you think, how is the policy performing and how is it placed in the curriculum?
So, Naziya, I sometimes look back at my career, which has spanned now 4 decades. Of course, 42 years as head of school now. And in Delhi, I've been the principal of Modern School Barackamba Road from 2000 to 2014. And thereafter, after some consultancy, which I thought I need to do to help out schools, I'm now for over the past 4 or 5 years, I'm full-time director and manager of Gyan Bharati School, Saket. Now, having said that, you asked me about how it feels like about the implementation curriculum of the new policy that has been announced in 2020. Uh, a much deserved, much desired policy that has come, and the framework of which is being examined and implemented to a large extent now. We have seen it all the four. We have seen the 68 policy, we have seen the 86 policy, we have seen the 2005 curriculum framework changes, and now the 2020 policy. And I do believe that the 2005 curriculum framework, which is a largely beautifully used document, I really wish that there aren't many significant changes in that, is what I had thought of. But as we went through this policy, I think a much required change set in the context of a few things that must be changed or required change, but a lot of things that must be preserved and
Right,
continued. These were
right,
the two factors that came to us to be thought out as senior educators.
right,
And I would say that while retaining some of the things that needed to be changed, because every policy, be it education, be it industry, be it technology, requires very quick understanding of the changes because life is not static. And therefore, to deal with life's requirements, we need to also change that. Now, this was significantly changed in time in terms of bringing a larger Indian context to the whole policy, A. And the second one was that trying to put in a standard framework which matched the international standards.
right,
So when we say what are the international standards, very often we landed up figuring out, normally seeing that, we had 1 year we finished earlier in our entire system, and we called it 10 plus 2 plus 3. Now
right,
we call it 5 plus 4 plus 4, 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4. So when we look at the new framework, it matches the international standards. So
mm,
the transition is correct and in full tune with the rest of the world. But more importantly, I think the major framework change that needs to be seen is in the early childhood education framework,
right,
which I think is beautiful.
mm,
Now, entry age into class 1 is 6, which was always there in the policy saying 6 to 14 is a compulsory age group for children, which has now been standardized. So you have these 5 years of foundational years, 3 years of primary, 3 years of upper primary, and 4 years of secondary that we see in our school system. Call it by whatever names that people have found it convenient to call. But when we look at this transition, that there should be 3 full years of preschooling, in which the 2 years of early primary has now been combined into 5 foundational years, I think that is a significant change because they are the most formative, most diverse, most inclusive requirement that is important to lay the foundation for a sound education system.
right.
Let's look at another one small aspect, and that is when changes happen, it will bring a certain amount of skepticism and doubt in
Right,
the minds of all in terms of how the language is going to be used. Is it overdoing a few aspects? Well, I think this is a policy which the NCRT brought out. And as we rightly say, the Ministry of Education looks at the whole thing, does the needful, and then hands it over to state for notifications.
Mhm.
Education being a state subject but on the concurrent list requires a very healthy interaction between the two.
Yes, yes, for sure.
And that I think must be well understood. And on the basis of that, we need to look at the differences between states and best do what is good for children.
Uh, Also, Lataji, we observed in the policy that it was encouraged for primary education that students should be given education in home language, or let's call it vernacular languages or regional languages. Will it not create a divide in private school kids and the government school kids for like a future race ahead that is waiting for them in a global platform? What are the chances that it might happen, this divide?
Um, I think when policies come and states notify, there is a certain amount of flexibility in which we interpret it. Although what we now mostly hear is that it should be, they don't say vernacular, they say mother tongue.
Hmm.
I do not want by any standards to believe that that's not a sound statement. However, if you read the original document, it is very clearly said that regional languages or mother tongue wherever possible. That small phrase, wherever possible, has not been expanded and spoken about much. Therefore, I would believe that it leaves sufficient flexibility for us to deal with it. We need to exactly think of what you said. While understanding the regional languages or the mother tongue is natural to a child,
Hmm.
because that is the most heard language, and language learning is more of an oral tradition. I think that is natural for the communities to learn. But if that is to be owned, unless there is a compulsion of that is only to be done this way, I think all schools will survive it. Also, let us think of this. This is one large cultural ethos, a great country, and the diversity is to be celebrated. And I think what we need to also focus on when we teach languages to children is that they need to understand what we are saying. Understanding is more important than the divide or the unity that languages can create. And I do believe that we travel from state to state. What about central government offices? What about children of different regional areas staying in different regional communities? For example, a South Indian staying in Bengal, a Bengal staying in Delhi, a Delhi staying in a Delhiite staying in Cochin. So there, and what about central government employees? So if you look at various systems that have evolved, whether it is the Kendriya Vidyalayas, whether it is the Navodaya Vidyalayas, whether it is all these CBSE schools which have flourished over the years, language has been a matter of convenience. I would say make sure that the quality of communication of the teachers is understood by the teacher, by the students and the children, young or otherwise, but do not mess ourselves with the depth of any kind of compulsion.
Right,
And I'm sure what has happened till now will continue to happen in future as well.
right. While
Nothing which is rigid is good. Anything which is rigid breaks, including a plant. We
Hmm.
need to learn to bend and function, to deal with what is important.
Yeah, right,
So while protecting the large base of children, and it is well possible there won't be a private. Is I still think there's no private and public divide. There isn't any. And had that been so true, the RT that has been now made compulsory for schools, and the number of children, the 25% children, are swimming through with 90% marks. How would they be doing if we ever imagined that they are not children who can study, they can't understand the English language? All that is, children are children. The price of the fee structures and the backgrounds don't define anything. What defines is the transaction within schools.
Right. While I was doing my research about this policy and I had interaction with few professors, so, this policy talks about a lot of choices and a lot of possibilities, a lot of flexibilities while choosing the subjects. But then when I had the conversation with a few professors, they said the infrastructure has not been developed. The student teacher ratio has not been, worked upon. Hence, the idea aspired and the idea getting delivered is not really coming at par.
So, yes, there is a mismatch. And I would agree with all the previous conversations you've had, be it professors, teachers, principals, schools, whatever, with whomever. I completely agree. But let's look at our CBSE structure. You know something? The CBSE affiliation rules and the structures have never said, not even in the past has it said, that a student studying physics cannot take history.
Right.
You can take physics and history and home science and graduate from school. What was the difficulty is that the colleges, say Delhi University in this case, for people who live in Delhi, for example, I'm taking an example, had groups. You need to do physics, chemistry, biology if you wanted to, physics, chemistry, maths if you want to do maths honors, physics honors, chemistry honors. The combination that came down from higher education compelled the schools to stick to groups. Otherwise, children who could go and escape this university and study in any other university had the option, complete option, to study what they wanted, even according to the older rules. Now, more and more, as we go through these 625 pages of the curriculum framework that has just hit in recent stands, I would say that it's very clear that, like some of the international systems, they're saying from this group choose this anyone, from that group choose anyone, which is largely the case in liberal arts colleges, and a lot of now private colleges have sprung up, which does not require a CUET to enter.
Hmm.
And they can choose any subject and study, gather credits. In fact, science students requiring to gather credits from non-science subjects and so on and so forth, which increases the width. So good practices, good following is important. I do feel that um, there isn't going to be any problem with study. I agree from what you said that the aspired and the reality don't match, as in the infrastructure. But slowly, I think people will start. Now we have the three streams running in all schools. The easier transaction would be, for example, if somebody wanted to study math, geography, and commerce,
Hmm.
as long as the higher education is flexible enough to take. So CUET kind of comes in and structures that, because then that test decides the entry point. And so
Right.
the changes in higher education have facilitated it. It'll make things easier in school for not forming these rigid groups.
Mhm.
So I think now it's more possible than it was before.
Right. Also, we observed in the policy that a mandatory of 4 years for getting graduated is must. Like earlier, it was three, then you go for the masters and all, and
Right.
now like people can get diploma a year, two
Yeah.
year, and so somewhere students will it discourage students to go for graduation and rather choose a diploma degree.
Um, let's look at it from another point of view. There were dropout rates, very heavy, particularly with respect to girls. The chances of continuing education bleak. Now, the little change that has come, firstly, the 4 years now matches with the degrees abroad. So there is a lot of flexibility for movement in largely in the world. No, I also agree that not a large, very small percentage actually move across the world. However, at least they have brought it at par. The 4 years now allows for a diploma in the first year, a certification in the second year, degree in the third year, and a fourth year, which has the components of extreme specialization finally gives you an honest degree. So now these 4 years makes it possible to exit at any level and enter at any level.
Yes, yes.
Now that makes it easier for girl students mostly. That also helps children who drop out to find jobs because at least they have some qualification. This is matched with some of the skills that they will be trained in. Those skills do fit into certain notches for jobs. So there is this literacy factor that is important with the certification for jobs, makes it easier for people, whether it's a girl child, whether it is for the less fortunate who have no finances to continue, to come, study, earn, go back to the system, and continue with their degrees.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
is now more often that we hear from the recent news, for example, third attempt, fourth attempt, eighth attempt in UPSC exams.
yeah.
I'm sure. Translate that, scale it down, and you will see that now the attempts and the entries and the exits have been made easy, have been made student friendly. It's a good move, and it also and the students can decide a change of subjects. They can transfer credits. It has the flexibility has to help people not create difficulties. And I do hope that more and more students would understand that. But the only challenges which I like is that children are getting more focused. Their early decisions with regard to what they want to do with life.
If I ask you, like with this policy, what changes would you suggest, or let's say, what amendments or what improvements can be done with this policy?
You know what? Ask me what I can do with this policy rather than what improvements I can do. You give me any policy.
Hmm.
I've lasted these 4 decades. You give me any policy, I will use it in the way children enjoy learning. I
Yeah.
will keep changing because fundamentally pedagogies don't change. The speed changes, the way in which you transact. Today you use more technology.
Yeah.
Today, if I want to do how show them a lion or a tiger, I use my AR, VRs and bring the tigers into the classrooms because technology assists me. But is that real? Is that a touch feeling? Is it concrete? No, it is very abstract. So without over depending on technology, I'm able to do a few things faster than I did before, much faster.
Makes sense.
And my connectivity, my train connectivity, my travel possibilities, my roads have improved. With or without any policy changes, these changes occur. So, this is what I would do. Number one, use my existing facilities to, without, it's like this when we teach dumb and deaf children with the same sensitivity as you should, because inclusivity and equity is a norm in education. You didn't require a language, and they didn't fail. Each time they moved forward, we passed, not them.
Right.
These children tell us that we are right each time. You younger generation tell us we are right each time. What is required then and now and in future is a sincere approach by the educational fraternity to deal
Right.
with children. Every other thing can be managed. You tell me don't do this, I will do it in another way, but I'll make sure my children learn. You say don't use this language, I will still do it in a way in which all languages are respected. But if this is the way I want to follow, I will do it.
Yeah.
The thing is, when no one doesn't have a problem with engineering in Hindi, for example, I put it this way. But before that, do you have textbooks? Do you have teachers who are trained? The infrastructure very often fails us in terms of putting policies before training and putting training and not putting training before we use it.
Right.
If I have to use, if the medical journals have to be in Hindi, first I need people with the language to understand. Then I need people, if I have a question paper in Hindi, I need people who can correct it well. I don't have that infrastructure. Then we'll go to the idea of whether it is Hindi is right or wrong, or English is right or wrong, or any other language is right or wrong. First, create suitable, correct infrastructure before implementing something. Otherwise, move towards it without disturbing the status quo.
Right.
And give yourself a target, political, economic, possible, strategical, whatever you want to call it, by whatever name you want to call it. Create the infrastructure for success. Don't create policies and say it failed because people didn't do it. The
Yeah.
infrastructure didn't exist.
Yeah.
That is what we should do. We should not get stuck on political debates or
Right.
inconvenient debates. Why call it political? Even politics is not wrong or right. So,
Right.
as educators, be steady and do what you should do for children.
Thank you so much, Lata ji.
Thank you.